Obviously, this is a dead end. The jobs that I did get never really gave me access to a different market. They didn't help me grow to the next job, to the next client base. It was just, as I always say, more of the same. Welcome everyone to Midweek Modern Craftsman. Today I want to talk about something that I've been thinking a lot about lately. And that's just how much information that I personally am willing to give away early on in the process these days. So when I first started, I felt like I really had to prove myself by giving away everything essentially for free. Ideas, details, solutions, my opinions, design advice. And this was basically just to try and win the job from these clients. But over time, I realized that I wasn't actually establishing trust. I was just providing free services like many other aspects of my business early on. So today I want to talk about where that line lies, how to draw it, and how to stop giving away things that you should actually be getting paid for, especially early on in the process. I think that we've all done this. Early client calls, those early client interviews when you started your business, you're starting to wrap your head around mentally what this job looks like. We put the cart before the horse and we start to give suggestions, whether it's layouts, design, process, product suggestions. We start solving problems for clients. We start figuring out layout issues. We start providing all of this information and these resources and our experience to these clients for free. And I think that we often believe this is what's going to instill the trust. This is what's going to sell the job, that we are being helpful in this process. And this is why these clients are going to offer or hire us. But I don't know if that was necessarily the case or if I needed to do that, because there were a lot of times that I did that and I spent a lot of time and I spent a lot of resources and I gave all of this information, my advice, my suggestions. I started figuring out what this job is going to look like, sequencing, reaching out to trades, sub-trades, putting pen to paper, and these clients would ghost me. And I'd never hear back from them, and not even a thank you for putting this together. It just bit me, and I got pretty tired of doing it and just running out after work every night and interviewing clients and meeting potential clients on estimates. I knew something had to budge. I just didn't know how. The problem isn't that we're helping these clients. The problem isn't that we're helping potential leads. It's not really understanding where that helping should end and where the work should begin, or at least the paid work. So early on, you start your business. I started my business. I didn't have a reputation. I didn't have a portfolio of work. I didn't have much experience. I really lacked confidence in not only my abilities, but my process and especially my pricing. And a lot of that confidence was that I felt I needed to be cheap, right? That was the way that you landed jobs. And I didn't want people to think I'm expensive. I'm at a different point in my career now, and I hope that I'm expensive. I hope that I position myself as a more expensive option, and the goal is for me to upsell what we're able to do. And that's not upsell as far as, hey, let's just add things that don't make sense or just doing them for the sake of doing them, but I want to be providing a higher level of service, a higher level of execution, because that's what I want to do, and that's how I want to position myself. So that's the upsell for me. My value proposition early on was not that I was going to be expensive. It was that I was going to be less expensive than the next guy, and I also was going to give you more than the next guy. So it's not even as though I was the same price as the next guy or girl. I'm saying guy, but girl obviously as well. But that I was going to be less and give you more. I was going to respond faster. You were going to get more of my attention. I was going to give you more ideas. And again, that lower price. What I was doing is I was training my clients and I was training my leads to feel as though they would always get free access to my brain, free access to my experience, free access to my resources, and all of my problem solving. There were a lot of jobs that I wasn't getting, so it was just a waste of time. because I was just another price. It usually was not because I was too expensive. It was either that they didn't know who I was. They were just checking that the price they had gotten was in line. They just figured they would reach out to me and see what I thought, maybe gauge my ideas, and go from there. A lot of times I was not getting hired. A lot of times I wasn't receiving responses. I realized that I wasn't really selling anything more than access to my brain. Like, that was the in for me, that I would be able to do all of this stuff for you for free, and it would be a concession on my behalf, but you were going to get more than the next guy, and typically for less money. Obviously, this is a dead end. The jobs that I did get never really gave me access to a different market. They didn't help me grow to the next job, to the next client base. It was just, as I always say, more of the same. It was more of the people who wanted what I was doing for these existing clients, which was giving you more than you paid for, executing at a higher level than you paid for, over executing, and really it all came at an expense to me. And as I added employees, as I grew my business, as I started doing more complex jobs, it only cost me more and more. And it took me a really long time to realize this and figure out why I was working more than ever. I was getting better jobs. I was growing my company, but my bottom line was typically less or the same, with substantially more overhead, risk, liability, and stress. So what was I doing wrong? So what's actually happening when these clients get a hold of you and you're going out and you're meeting with them and you're looking at their space and they're asking you what your thoughts are, and they're asking you questions that another contractor asked them to see what your thoughts are. What are you doing? You're defining scope for these clients. You are identifying risk. You're potentially helping to mitigate risk. You are potentially helping them with material selections, design decisions, sequencing, access to your experience, to your knowledge, to your vendors, to your subcontractors, to everything that's valuable, everything that you've earned, all of your experience, all of that sweat equity, you're giving them access to for free. You are solving what usually is the most difficult part of the job, the beginning aspect, the planning, the forethought, the design, the coordination up front for free. Usually once a job starts, that's the easy part. At least for me it is. The work is generally the easy part. Once I open something up, now it's just one step after the next, one sequence after the next, one sub-trade after the next. You're following the roadmap that you've created, and maybe there's slight adaptations and modifications, but it's just a very natural, organic process, and you work from beginning to end. That's easy. The hard part is trying to understand how to roadmap this project, how to source everything for this project, how to coordinate everything for this project and sequence it on paper. That's difficult. That's where I feel you are making it or you are breaking it in a huge way. You're giving them also metrics that they can shop around if that's what they're trying to do. They can take the conversations that you're having with them and the information that you provided, and they can start gauging other contractors. They can start asking other contractors what their thoughts are. They can start taking your estimate and using that as a basis for interviewing other people to see where they stand. You are becoming their unpaid estimator, designer, and consultant. This is all time at this point in my career. Early on, when I'm running around, I'm chasing all these jobs that I can't bill for. I can't put this in my overhead. I'm already not getting jobs, so I really can't afford to be more expensive. I can't afford to raise my price. I can't afford marketing, a website, lettering my truck, all these expenses when you're just starting off. You don't have enough work. So this is not a cost, a time, a resource that I feel you can capture and bill early on. It's part of the game. You have to get your name out there. But as a small contractor, we don't have a buffer for this. I never had a buffer for this. I couldn't capture this cost. I couldn't add it to my costs. So every hour that I was doing this, it was pulling me from either being away from my family, pulling me from other work, and it was costing me money. And again, once I hired employees, that cost went up substantially. The liability, the risk, everything went up substantially. I was bleeding money hand over fist. I say this all the time, but as contractors, as residential builders, remodelers, we are all very small companies. We're not made up of thousands of employees. Yes, there are some builders out there, commercial builders that are, but for the most part, if you're listening to this, if you follow the Modern Craftsman podcast, we're all very small companies. 1 man, 2 man, again, woman as well. 10, 12, 20, even if you're 40, you are a tiny company in the grand scheme of things. We cannot be conceding hours. We cannot be conceding time. Again, look at the big picture. If you have 40 employees and people can work 2,000 hours a year, it's not a lot of hours to be invoicing to not only cover all of your overhead, all your expenses, all your liability, all your risk, all of the cost of work that's being put in place, and then your profit on top of that. So again, the smaller you are, the more valuable your time has to be because there's less of it. So you have to make sure that you're creating a line in the sand where you're offering enough information to instill trust in the relationship, in the potential client, but you are not giving them more than they are willing to pay for, that you're not giving them a leg to stand on, that you're not arming them with information that's going to hurt you down the road. So how do we draw this line? Where do we draw this line? Where we have to say no more. At this point, that's all that I can offer you for free. So define that line, whatever that looks like. Take a peek at what your jobs look like, what typically that interaction is, if it's in person, if it's online, if it's a phone call, if it's text message, and understand how much guidance you're willing to concede for free. So for me, as general guidance, I will enlighten them on my process. I will enlighten them on typically what our fees look like, what our job rates are, where our jobs start, what our baseline is, how we're structured as a business, the type of non-negotiables that we have, what our jobs typically look like. I may even give some insight as to what I think this job could entail, but I'm not going to be giving project-specific solutions. So if there's something very unique to your project, I will explain to them, hey, this is how I would approach this. I don't want to shoot from the hip here, but this job's fairly complicated. This would require this, and this from me. Typically, that's going to take around this amount of time. And then explain to them what that would look like if they wanted to proceed. But I'm not going to tap into my resources, into my experience, into my network to instill trust in them just to potentially get this project. You have to understand, and your situation and how far you're willing to go may be different than the way that I'm structured, just based on my market, the people who are getting a hold of me, the type of work that I do. So my line in the sand may be at a different point than your line in the sand, but you have to understand where that is. Somebody gets a hold of me for a kitchen, right? Yeah, I will discuss typically what our kitchens cost, typically what the cabinet package may cost, what that may look like as a percentage of the overall kitchen cost, just to make sure that we align. But I'm not going to be pricing kitchen cabinets. I'm not going to be giving them the type of cabinets that I'm using, my cabinet showroom that I'm using. I'm not going to start discussing finished design, anything for free at that point. Just general information that they're going to get to that's also going to either make them move in one direction or another. So yes, our kitchens typically start at $150,000. We are typically allocating 25% of kitchen budget to cabinets. We do not do anything less than a custom cabinet, right? And I have access to cabinets that probably are more of a semi-custom price point, but I still want them to be custom because I don't want to be dealing with the issues that I've ran into from semi-custom. So all the the differentiators that I and the non-negotiables that I have established for my business, I will discuss. I will discuss what potential jobs cost because it's such a low-level lift for me. And if it's too much right now, I'd rather have them walk away or really figure out where that line in the sand is early on than spending too much time and energy moving forward with this client just for them down the road to be like, no, this is too much money. Typically, budgets may land in this range for this type of project. Again, I don't want to shoot from the hip here. There's a few ways that we could approach this. Big picture, this is what I see this looking like. We could go down this route for this job. We could go down this route for this job. It comes down to what your program is, how you want to spend your money, all of those things. What I'm not going to do is I'm not going to get into a detailed scope breakdown. I'm not going to start speccing products. I am not going to start sequencing a job. I'm not going to be reaching out to subcontractors. I'm not going to give you a how I would build this type of walkthrough or analysis of your project. That's a very specific topic. I would need more information. I would need to take more time analyzing this project, and that's something that typically I would dive into during our pre-construction. That's something that I may say to a client. Again, I always am using, I don't want to shoot from the hip. When somebody says, well, what do you think this is going to cost? I can give you what I've done before, what type of projects I've done before. I can give you a baseline for our bathrooms start at this point, our additions start at this point, our built-ins start at this point. But again, I don't want to shoot from the hip. I need more information. I'm not willing to provide that information until I really understand this project better. And in order to understand this project better, we need a more refined design. We need to understand the scope of work better. I need to get subcontractors on the job. I need access to your architect, and I need more questions answered in order to understand what this job looks like and to really lock in a more accurate number, and that would be part of our pre-construction process. So I'm leading people towards a system and towards a process that works for me. Maybe it doesn't work for them, and that's okay. They might not be my customer. But it's my job, it's my time, it's my process. If you want to hire me, this is part of our process, and I'm going to walk you and lead you to the process that works for me. I'm not going to shapeshift, I'm not going to morph and adapt to your process or what works for you. I need to protect myself, my time, and my bottom line. I was giving away too much for free, and that I should not be competitively bidding jobs anymore. I was really executing at a high level. I was getting better jobs, but the numbers weren't quite there. And I didn't really have a great way of vetting my clients through my system, through my lead intake, through what I was doing on in-person meetings, consultations, estimates, email. I needed something else that was going to really create that line in the sand that was indistinguishable, that you were either on one side of it or you were the other. And this was very scary for me because you're going all in or you're going all out. There's no in between, there's no gray area. And I was afraid to do that because I was afraid what would happen if it didn't work. And what that was telling clients that I would no longer be competitively bidding projects. So what did that process look like for me? Obviously, I had to integrate pre-construction into my workflow. I didn't have a pre-construction process. I didn't really understand what pre-construction was other than I wanted to get paid before I had the job. I wanted my clients to have skin in the game. So we've talked about this before, but it went from a skin in the game fee, a minor fee, to engage me in pre-construction where I was still over-executing, over-delivering, to now basically I do it like every other job where we budget a certain amount of time. We work through pre-construction. We bill against that budget. If we go over, it's an hourly fee. You own all of that information, whether you do the job, whether you don't do the job. You don't have to hire me for the main contract. Basically, again, I'm just getting paid for my time, and I'm not putting more work in place than I've gotten paid for. So that hard line in the sand that you cannot be on one side you cannot be on both sides, was that I will no longer competitively bid a job. So as a client, you are either going to be okay with that or not okay with that. So that is cutting out more than 50% of my potential leads right off the bat, and that was scary. I would say probably 80%, maybe higher, 90% people want to competitively bid a job. So that was a very scary decision to respond to people who reach out to me and say, hey, we want to get an estimate for this work to be done, and me to say, oh, I'm sorry, we don't provide estimates. It's all paid consulting. That was very scary for me, and I lost a lot of clients and I lost a lot of leads, but realistically, those leads were not going to hire me anyway, and I realized that I was just saving myself so much time. I wanted to be getting paid for pre-construction. I obviously had to develop that system. I had to work on that, adapt that, constantly revise that, constantly modify that, but I was moving in the direction that I needed to, and I created a line in the sand that it was like politics. You had to be on one side or the other. You couldn't be in between. You couldn't choose both sides. So I was pigeonholing myself into a very specific client, into a very specific business that I had no choice but to make work. I was either going to sink or I was going to swim, and I'm really not somebody that is willing to sink. So I had to figure out, like, what was the first step in this? And I started realizing that it had to be my lead intake and how I was engaging clients and how I was engaging leads and how I was explaining to them that we no longer are competitively bidding projects. And what was the value that I was providing aside from a free estimate, aside from free consulting, that they would be willing to go take the next step with me, engage with TRG Home Concepts, being that I now just wasn't giving them free access to my experience. So I had to really craft an email response that I felt not only drew the line in the sand, but also educated them on why I was no longer competitively bidding jobs. What made me different? What part of my process was extremely valuable, that it was worth signing a pre-construction agreement prior to me actually getting you any sort of information on this job, right? That's a hard sell, especially when the industry is not doing that. So I crafted an email response that I did modify a lot, but my email response is very similar now, that basically goes into, hey, I understand that you want an estimate. I understand that that's pretty typical for the industry, but that's not something that we offer, and here's why. And I explained that I'm a very small contractor, that I am quality over quantity, that I do not carry an overhead for pricing projects, for estimating projects throughout the year, that essentially my clients that hire me would be paying for the overhead of clients who are not hiring me, and I don't think that that's fair. I've been doing this for a long time, and I do believe that our product and our process is different, and that I do not believe competitively bidding projects suits me because it's not always apples to apples. I want our clients to hire us because of what we do as a contractor, who we are as people, and what we're able to do that's different than other contractors. And if you're interested in learning more about what that process looks like, what that consulting looks like, I'll explain that. But I just want to say that out front. For us, competitively bidding jobs just doesn't work. We don't want to carry that overhead. And we are more than willing to walk through your job and serve as a consultant for you, but we just can't do that for free. So in so many words, that's what this email is, this response to my inquiries that I have with clients, that creates that line in the sand that you have to be on one side or the other. There's no in between. You're either okay with paying me for that, or you want to bid something and you want to get 3 people to do that work for free. So it's up to me to be able to sell that, to be able to sell that value, to properly communicate that with my potential clients and understand what are the indicators that tell me this client is a fit for me. So I would suggest for you guys and girls who are not there yet to do something similar. And it's scary, but there has to be certain aspects of your job, of what you do, of who you are as a person, how you started your company, what you do differently, what makes you tick, why did you go off on your own. The basis for these things make you uniquely you, that nobody else is like you. And when you begin to understand the value in who you are and what you do, and that it's unique to every other individual or company out there, you start to realize that there's a client that will fit that profile. And that's your client. And you just have to understand how to get to them. You have to understand the line in the sand that leads you to that client. And for me, the first step in that, and the biggest hurdle, is the pre-construction, is the paid consulting, is getting paid to plan. And again, very scary. But when I decided to say I would no longer be competitively bidding projects, although that was extremely scary, it was a natural progression from there on out to understand how I would become successful while not basing my business off concessions, and I'm going to give you more than the next guy for the same, if not less money. And when I started understanding that, and when I drew that line in the sand, and when I started understanding that pre-construction and paid consulting was not only an additional revenue stream, which it is, but to me that's not really the only reason I do it. It's because it aligns me with the client that is my ideal client profile. Yes, I get paid for it, but it's also a client that's willing to pay me for services that other people are not charging money for. So they see value in what I do. It is a massive indicator for me that somebody wants me to do the work for them, that somebody wants TRG to do their job, when they're willing to pay me a fee that other people typically don't charge. So understand who you are, understand what you do, understand what's different about what you do, really define your value proposition. And when a client reaches out to you, when they want you to come to their house, when they want you to give them an estimate, when they want you to spend your time, your resources helping them when they have not committed to you, you now have a response. You now have a path forward or a way to cut the cord that really supports what you want to be doing as a contractor. And that would be my advice to you. And again, it started with me just saying, I no longer am competitively bidding jobs. So what does this interaction look like for the next lead that comes on my plate when they text me, they call me, they email me, they shoot me a DM, they say, hey, we're looking to get an estimate for our kitchen. What's that conversation look like now that I no longer am willing to do that, but it still potentially might be a client for me? And that's what developed my email response, my sales pitch, everything that makes me uniquely who I am as a person and a business owner. And really my value proposition, all those differentiators, needs to be distilled down into an elevator pitch, essentially, that's going to, again, draw a line in the sand for these leads that they have to put both feet on one side of the line or the other side of the line, and it's impossible to be in both. And I think once you do that, it's going to lead you in the direction that you need to be to start understanding where your value actually is in this industry. I'd be interested to hear what that looks like from a listener perspective and what your plan is in order to do that moving forward. What you're afraid of by potentially doing that, what scares you about that. Accountability is very scary. It's just like, right, you want to lose 10 pounds and you don't know if you're going to be able to stick to your diet. You're not going to tell anyone that your goal is to lose 10 pounds. But if you write this down, if you tell your business partner, if you tell your employees, if you tell your wife, your significant other, your husband, your peers that, hey, I want to transition my business, I'm going to change something within my business, and I'm no longer going to be doing this, and you create that accountability by having that conversation, you will be more than willing to stick to it, because you do not want to fail. You do not want to fail publicly. You do not want to fail in front of your peers, and you will work a little bit harder. So I'd be interested to hear what you guys are going to do to keep yourself accountable, and really take this next step in changing your business. And again, it doesn't have to be pre-construction. It doesn't have to be getting paid for this. But what are certain aspects of your business? What are certain jobs that you are only willing to take because you understand that's the right type of job for you, and you no longer are going to be just really sustaining what's going on without any actual growth or without any progression, because it's just what's landing on your lap. It's what's landing on your plate, and it's paying the bills. It's keeping the light on, but you're not really growing. You're not really progressing in your career. So I'd love to hear and see what people are doing, or where they'd like to go, or what barriers to entry they'd like to create for their business moving forward. You can shoot me an email, tyler@trghomeconcepts.com, and I will be your accountability buddy. All right, guys and girls, hope you enjoyed this one. Hope you enjoyed your spring break. If you had a spring break, if you didn't, hope you are getting some nice spring weather. I'm excited. We are entering quarter 2 of this year, where we have some new topics to discuss on Modern Craftsman, and we are going to dig into again. If you have not joined the Circle community, you're interested in that, check out the link in our link tree on our Instagram profile. It's a really nice community of people that we are creating, really just where it's a step above what we're doing on the podcast, and it is not a public, well, I guess it's a public forum, but it's not open to the public. It's a paid community. So there's a bit of a barrier there, where we're going to be able to share some stuff on there that we wouldn't generally share on the podcast or via our email list. So if you want a bit more of an insider view of the Modern Craftsman platform and community, check that out. As always, I appreciate everyone hanging around, everyone listening. Spread the word. Let everyone know if you enjoy this podcast. Reshare it, and I will catch you all next week.